The sound of dripping water is the only clock in the dark. Drip, tap, echo. It is a rhythmic reminder that time is passing, even when you can't see the sun. I'm huddled in a crevice no wider than a coffin, my back pressed against the weeping limestone. Every breath I take feels heavy, thick with the smell of wet minerals and ancient rot. My name is Julian. I used to be an architect. I used to care about floor plans and load-bearing walls. Now, the only architecture I care about is the geometry of the shadows shifting in front of me. I am trapped 300 feet below the surface of the Appalachian Range, and the mountain is trying to swallow me whole. It started as a simple expedition. 4 of us, me, Leo, Sarah, and Marcus. We were looking for the silent cathedral, a legendary chamber hidden behind a labyrinth of unmapped crawl spaces. We were supposed to be out in 6 hours. It's been 3 days. The flood came without warning. It wasn't a roar. It was a sigh, a low, vibrating hum that traveled through the floor before the first inch of freezing water touched my boots. By the time we realized the underground river had breached its banks, the tunnel behind us was a pressurized tube of black death. We ran. We scrambled. We climbed until the air grew thin and the walls grew tight. Now I am alone. I haven't seen Leo or Sarah since the first hour. I heard Marcus scream, a wet, gurgling sound that was cut short by the rising tide. I try not to think about that. If I think about Marcus, I think about the water filling his lungs. If I think about the water, I start to feel it rising around my own ankles. But the water isn't the only thing in here. Suspense is a funny thing. On the surface, it's a jump scare in a movie. Down here, it's a slow-motion car crash that never ends. Every time I turn off my headlamp to save the battery, the darkness becomes a physical weight, presses against my eyes. I start to see things, hallucinations born of sensory deprivation. Pale faces floating in the black, fingers reaching out from the cracks. Drip, tap, echo. Julian. The voice is a whisper. Sounds like Sarah. My heart hammers against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. I flick the light on. The beam is weak, a sickly yellow spear cutting through the dark. There is nothing but the wet stone and the rising water. The tunnel is empty. Sarah, I croak. My voice is a jagged wreck. Is that you? Silence. Then, a splashing sound from the darkness ahead. Slow, deliberate, like someone or something is wading toward me. Help me. The voice comes again, but it's wrong. The pitch is off. It sounds like a recording being played at the wrong speed. It sounds like something trying to imitate a human voice without understanding what a human is. I scramble backward, my fingers scraping against the jagged ceiling. Can't go far. The cave narrows into a squeeze. A passage so tight you have to exhale just to move your chest through. Beyond that is the drowning room, a chamber we barely escaped when the flood began. The splashing stops. I hold my breath, the silence ringing in my ears. In the dim light of my fading headlamp, I see a hand reach around the corner of the rock. It's pale, too long. The fingers have an extra joint, moving with a fluid, insect-like grace. It doesn't look like Sarah's hand. It doesn't look like any hand I've ever seen. It grips the limestone, pulling a head into view. The face is a ruin. Skin like wet parchment stretched over a skull that is too wide. No eyes. Just smooth, translucent flesh where the sockets should be. But it has a mouth. A wide, lipless grin filled with needle teeth. It tilts its head, listening to my frantic heartbeat. Julian. It whispers in Sarah's voice. It's cold down here. Won't you come back to the water? I don't scream. If I scream, I lose the air I need to squeeze through the tunnel. I turn, shoving my body into the narrow crack behind me. The stone is cold, biting into my shoulders. I can hear the creature behind me, the sound of its wet, naked skin sliding against the rock. It's coming. It's faster than I am. The water is rising faster now. It's at my waist, then my chest. I have to tilt my head back just to keep my nose above the surface. The cave is filling. The mountain is drinking. I pull myself through the narrowest part of the squeeze, my skin tearing on the flint-like edges. I emerge into a small pocket of air. I look back. The pale hand is already reaching into the squeeze after me. Julian, sighs. I have to go deeper. I have to go into the drowning room. It's the only way out or the final grave. The water is no longer just a threat. It's an environment. As I drag myself into the drowning room, I am forced to submerge. The transition from the dry, dusty air of the upper crawls to the frigid, mineral-heavy water of the sump is like a physical blow to the heart. My skin reacts instantly, drawing tight, my nerves screaming as the temperature drops. Down here, the silence isn't just a lack of sound. It's a pressure that sits behind your eyes. I am navigating by touch. The beam of my headlamp is dying, casting a dim, flickering strobe light that makes the jagged rocks look like they're reaching for me. In the reference file, English auto-generated. They paid me to watch over a feline woman, but when I saw her, I knew ih.txt. There is a sense of being watched by something that doesn't belong in your world. I feel that now. Every time the light flickers out for a microsecond, I swear I see that pale, lipless face right in front of my visor. Julian, why are you running? The voice comes from inside the water. It shouldn't be possible. Sound shouldn't travel like that. It sounds like Sarah, but the cadence is stolen from a memory of her laughing at a campfire 3 summers ago. It's a loop, a perfect, terrifying mimicry. I remember the story in English, auto-generated. Medusa offered me immortality in exchange for an eternal bond downsa company TXT, where voices fill a forest, confusing the traveler. This cave is doing the same. It's using my grief as a compass to lead me deeper into the dark. I find a small air pocket near the ceiling. I gasp, the air tasting of sulfur and bat guano. My hands are shaking so violently I can barely grip the ledge. I'm not real, I whisper to myself. It's the hypoxia. The CO2 levels are spiking. My brain is misfiring. But then the water ripples. Something is swimming beneath me. Not a fish. Something large with the pale, translucent skin of a creature that has never seen a photon of light. In the file, English, auto-generated. My ship sank and the Queen of the Abyss took me to her kingdom to train h.txt. The protagonist describes being chosen by a dweller of the deep. I don't feel chosen. I feel hunted. I see a movement in the corner of the chamber. A figure is slumped against the wall. Leo, I call out. The figure shifts. It's Leo. His diving suit is shredded, and his leg is twisted at an impossible angle. He looks up, and for a second, relief washes over me like a warm tide. But as I get closer, the light from my headlamp catches his eyes. They aren't Leo's eyes. They are flat, white marbles. No pupils. No life. Julian, Leo says. His voice is perfectly his, but his mouth doesn't move. The sound is coming from his chest. The mountain wants to show you the truth. The water is just the beginning. The flood didn't come from the river. It came from us. I back away, my boots slipping on the slick mud. Behind Leo, the wall of the cave begins to pulse. It's not stone. It's a membrane, thick and veiny, stretching across a tunnel I didn't see before. It looks like the organic technology described in English, auto-generated. I crashed on a space mission. Now am the trophy of a race of women who ha.txt. The cave isn't a geological formation. It's a digestive tract. We aren't trapped, Julian. The thing wearing Leo's face says. We're being processed. Suddenly, the pale creature from the squeeze bursts through the water. It doesn't attack me. It goes for Leo. It sinks its needle teeth into his neck, and instead of blood, a thick, glowing green fluid pours out. The same Gorgon blood mentioned in the reference materials. The creature looks at me, and its voice changes. It's no longer Sarah. It's my own voice. Run, Julian, before you realize you're already dead. I scramble into the next tunnel, a vertical chimney that leads upward. My muscles are burning, my fingernails tearing as I claw at the limestone. I can hear them below me, a chorus of my friends' voices, all screaming my name in unison. It's a wall of sound, a psychological assault designed to break my will. I have to reach the upper gallery. I have to find the silent cathedral. If the legends are true, there's an exit there. But as I climb, the air starts to smell like iron. I reach the top and collapse onto a ledge. I am in a massive hall. The ceiling is lost in the darkness, but the floor is covered in thousands of white shapes. I crawl forward and realize what they are. Statues. Hundreds of people, frozen in poses of absolute terror. It's the clearing from English, auto-generated. Medusa offered me immortality in exchange for an eternal bond down sub.company txt, but underground. These aren't carvings. These are the explorers who came before me. The mineral-rich water didn't just drown them. It petrified them. And then one of the statues blinks. The statue that blinked wasn't a statue. Not yet. It was a man named Elias, an explorer who had gone missing 3 years ago. His skin was the color of chalk, hardened by the calcium-rich runoff of the silent cathedral. He was fused to the floor, his legs becoming part of the stalagmites, but his eyes, raw, wet, and terrified, were still human. They were the only part of him the cave hadn't finished eating. "Kill me," he wheezed. The sound didn't come from his throat. It was a vibration in the air, a low-frequency hum that resonated in my own chest. I realized then that the silent cathedral wasn't a place of worship. It was a larder. The high mineral water that flooded the tunnels wasn't an accident of nature. It was a biological process. The cave fed by petrifying its prey, keeping the nervous systems alive within a limestone shell to act as a sensory network. Every scream, every heartbeat of the trapped, was data being fed into the mountain's consciousness. The voices of Sarah, Leo, and Marcus began to swell around me again. But they weren't behind me anymore. They were coming from the statues. Thousands of stone mouths were vibrating in unison, creating a polyphonic choir of agony. "Julian, stay with us. The surface is a lie." I backed away, stumbling over the calcified remains of a woman holding a camera. Her lens was now a solid orb of quartz. I felt a sudden, sharp sting in my ankle. I looked down. The water, the glowing, green-tinged water from the lower levels, was beginning to seep into the cathedral. But it wasn't just rising. It was moving with intent, like 1,000 tiny translucent worms. I felt my boots grow heavy. I tried to lift my foot, but it was stuck. Not stuck in mud, but fused. I looked down in horror as the minerals in the water reacted with my suit, crystallizing in seconds. The petrification was starting. In a frantic burst of adrenaline, I unsheathed my climbing pick and hacked at my own boots. I slipped out of them, standing in my wool socks on the freezing, wet stone. I had to move. If I stayed still for more than a minute, I would become another pillar in this cathedral of meat and stone. I saw it then. At the far end of the hall, a sliver of moonlight, a chimney that led straight to the surface. It was high, at least 50 feet up a sheer, slick wall. "You can't leave," the voice of my own mother whispered from a statue nearby. "The weight of the world is too much, Julian. Down here, you are part of something eternal." I ignored the voices. I ignored the phantom pains of my friends' deaths. I began to climb. Without boots, my toes bled against the sharp rock, but the pain was the only thing keeping me grounded. I was halfway up when the creature, the pale, lipless mimic, emerged from a hole in the wall right next to me. It didn't grab me. It just stared. It looked like a distorted mirror of my own face now. "Why do you want to go back?" it asked, using my voice with perfect clarity. "Up there, you are alone. Up there, you are an architect of boxes. Down here, you are the mountain." "I am Julian," I screamed, slamming my pick into the rock just above its head. "And I am going home." I lunged for the ledge of the chimney, my fingers catching on a root that had broken through from the surface. I pulled. My muscles screamed. The mimic reached out a long, translucent finger and touched my bare heel. The cold was absolute. I felt the sensation in my foot vanish instantly as the skin turned to gray, lifeless stone. I let out a guttural roar of defiance and hauled myself into the vertical shaft. The crawl felt like hours. The air grew fresher, smelling of pine and rain, but my lower body felt like lead. I was dragging a dead weight behind me. Finally, my hands broke through the topsoil. I pulled myself out into the wet grass of the Appalachian night. I collapsed, sobbing, feeling the rain wash away the grime of the deep. I was alive. I had beaten the cave. I looked back at the hole, expecting the mimic to emerge, but the forest was silent. I tried to stand up to run to my car, parked a mile away, but I couldn't. I looked down at my legs. The petrification hadn't stopped at my heel. It was spreading. Without the mineral-rich water of the cave, the process was accelerating, reacting with the oxygen in the air. My legs were solid stone up to the knees. My waist was turning gray. I reached for my phone in my pocket to call for help, but my fingers were stiff. I watched, paralyzed with a new kind of horror, as my skin took on the matte, white sheen of limestone. The final twist hit me like a physical blow. The cave hadn't tried to stop me from leaving. It wanted me to leave. I looked around the clearing and realized I wasn't the first one to make it out. Scattered among the trees were other statues. Hikers, campers, and locals. All frozen in mid-stride, their faces turned toward the moon. The mountain wasn't just a larder. It was a garden. It was planting its seeds on the surface. As my jaw began to lock and my eyes turned to white marble, I heard the final whisper in the wind. It wasn't Sarah's voice, or Leo's, or the mimic's. It was the mountain's voice, and it was satisfied. Welcome to the surface, Julian. Thank you for the soil. If you love the story and want more contents like this, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the channel for interesting videos.